Hey, Brandon. Hey. I'm talking to you, Brandon. Hey. Hey, Brandon. What's going on, Brandon? Look, Brandon. It seems problems inside of the world from strangers' ways of having sex, pregnancy, and what strangers call marriage have made problems for a long time for a lot of people. And answers are needed of what your tribe thinks happened, or what your tribe teaches you, Brandon. Since you are not a teacher, since you have a tribe of teaching you, and since you have the character of saving your virginity, you're 6. You're voluntarily going all the way 6 for the purpose of being married. It seems you never made anyone into a single mom or single mother, and since you never made a single parent household, and since you never forced a pregnancy, and since you never had voluntary sex with someone making them pregnant, then a child being born from the pregnancy, and then after a child being born from the pregnancy, you never moved on to the next girl, the next girl, the next girl, and the next girl, outside of the identity of your marriage license certificate, making people into single moms or single mothers and causing single parent households and problems. What does your tribe teach to you, Brandon? What has your tribe taught you, Brandon? And I am you, Brandon, So it's very crazy because I am you and I'm talking to you. But being in touch with yourself, knowing yourself. Sometimes I forget who I am. I'm 39 years old today, and with all the brain damage and stuff wrong with my head and my mind and my brain from being abused, sometimes talking to you, Brandon, is for knowing myself of who I am. So, what has your tribe taught you, Brandon? okay, since I am you, and I am a Brandon, I can say what my tribe taught me, you know. But what my tribe taught me was that, you know, some stranger had way too many children or way too many pregnancies. And the reason why I say both is because some stranger had way too many pregnancies. And some of the pregnancies were where when some stranger was pregnant, some stranger physically did an abortion of causing the child to have lost life, you know. Because the physical abortion from the physical actions of physically taking the life of a child, they say caused ghosts or monsters or bad spirits hunting people from the physical actions of when someone had way too much sex. Some stranger had way too much sex. And from having way too much sex, some stranger had way too many pregnancies and tried getting rid of some of the pregnancies. And when those pregnancies were made and, you know, an unborn child had became the victim of a physical abortion, whether someone was using their hands, you know, whether a stranger was using their hands, or whether a stranger was using a machine, or whether a stranger was using a physical object of doing a physical abortion, taking the life of an unborn child. And then the child would go into the afterlife, they say, being told the cause of the abortion, being told the stranger's identity of physically using their hands or a machine or a physical object being the cause of the abortion. And when the child would have been told in the afterlife of the cause of the abortion, they say the child would be given the right of, you know, taking the life of whoever it was, you know, the stranger with the character of physically causing the abortion, from physically having too much sex, from physically causing an abortion, from physically using a machine, or from physically using hands, from physically, you know, having physical contact, you know, from doing the abortion intentionally, you know. It's what they say happens when someone had way too much sex, you know, some stranger, you know. So I don't know them, And I'm not specifically, I don't know if I'm saying the words right, but according to this language, I think the word is specifically. So I'm not specifically naming anyone, and I'm not directly or indirectly talking about anyone specifically at all. You know, what I am saying is answering what my tribe taught me of the problems from strangers having way too much sex, from strangers making way too many pregnancies, and from strangers intentionally causing abortions or miscarriages intentionally is what strangers did. And then ghosts and afterlife spirits were made hunting, you know, those who caused those situations, those strangers. And I'm not part of it, you know, because I never caused any of those types of situations, because I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, you know. So, they say that, the problems was caused from strangers because some strangers, for some strange reason or for some other reason, had a strange, crazy idea of, you know, some stranger said some stranger was married, and two strangers claimed being a married couple. When the two strangers claimed being a married couple, one of the strangers, you know, became pregnant from having sex and called themselves a family, you know, a family of strangers. Once the family of strangers, you know, was made from the two strangers claiming a marriage and from the two strangers having a pregnancy and a child born from the pregnancy, one of the strangers who was claiming being a husband decided he was going to be going all the way sex with someone else outside of, you know, what he called a marriage. And then, you know, the same thing happened. When he left outside of what he called a marriage, you know, the mom and the baby was left, and the guy claimed to be a husband, went somewhere else, had sex with someone else, made another baby. I don't understand why anyone would do anything like that, you know, because, you know, it seems wrong doing it. It's what my tribe taught to me. When the mom and the child asked the guy claiming being a husband who was the other lady and who was the other baby, he said it's his baby mama, it's his other wife, and it's his other child. And then she said it seems wrong doing it that way. She doesn't have a other baby daddy. And she doesn't have a other child. You know? And she said, it seems wrong and not fair. And, you know, they say it started, the problems, from those strangers having way too much sex with way too many people, making way too many children. And then, you know, some people, you know, would be homeless. Some strangers would be homeless because for some reason people kept creating pregnancies even though it wasn't a house or a home for all the strangers being inside of. And if too many people were made without enough houses or homes or places for living, then what my tribe teaches me is it's no point of creating all of those pregnancies or having all of that sex, creating all of those pregnancies, if so many people exist without places for living, housing, homes, and, you know, someone had way too much sex, you know, is what my tribe teaches me. And there's evidence, you know, because, you know, my tribe of, you know, believing in the God of saving seeds, you know, meaning virginity. If a person said, I saved my seeds for the purpose of being married to one spouse only ever in life, and then according to my tribe, it means I saved my virginity for the purpose of being married to one spouse only ever in life. And what virginity means is voluntary going all the way sex, you know. And, you know, what it means for being a male, myself, what it means is going all the way sex means sticking my private parts inside of a person's mouth or womb or butt. And finishing the job of going all the way means when wet stuff comes out of the male private parts and the wet stuff goes inside of the mouth or womb or butt of another person from going all the way, doing it, having sex, is what they say doing it is. And I never did any of it outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is. And they say there's evidence, you know, of a lot of strangers who have had way too much sex, and a lot of strangers who made way too many pregnancies, and a lot of strangers who made way too many problems from creating way too many pregnancies, and from creating way too many births, and from having way too many abortions, which created way too many ghosts, and which created way too many problems. And, you know, I never caused any of it, you know. Because I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is. And I never physically participated in abortion, or I never physically, you know, worked at one of those clinics signing off papers or ordering the abortion, you know. I never had those types of employees working for me doing abortions, so it's not my fault for any of the abortions or any of the ghosts or bad spirits which came from, you know, unborn children being victims of abortions, you know. So, you know, what my tribe teaches of being married is there should be evidence of a marriage license certificate, you know, if a person claims being married, is what my tribe teaches to me. So there's no reason for being mad at me for, you know, what my tribe teaches to me. And what my tribe teaches to me of being married, what it means is when there is a marriage license certificate as evidence of a marriage license certificate would have a name of a husband claiming being a husband, and a name of a wife claiming being a wife is what a marriage license certificate would have. And what my tribe teaches me is if a husband claims being a husband and a wife claims being a wife, all of the children made from the sex of the husband, the name the marriage license certificate says is the husband, and the wife, the name the marriage license certificate says is the name of the wife, you know. If children were made from the husband and the wife having sex with each other, then it is not a crime. Is what my tribe teaches me, you know. And there would be a date of the marriage license certificate, and there would be a date of when the children were born. If the children were born after the date of the marriage license certificate of the husband and the wife, and then the birth of the children would not be a crime, is what my tribe teaches me. You know, because they say it would mean the children were born from a marriage, you know. So, you know, the pregnancy or a pregnancy made before a marriage license certificate and if the child from the pregnancy was born after the date of the marriage license certificate, and then the marriage license certificate would be evidence of the pregnancy being made for the purpose of being married. And the marriage license certificate would be evidence of covering the child with the safety and security of a marriage license certificate being evidence of the child being born from a marriage, with evidence of a marriage license certificate of the same name the wife of the marriage license certificate has, being the same name the birth certificate for the child has. What it means is a birth certificate has a identity section of who is the mom or who is the dad or what is the child's name. So the child would not have the same name as the mom, but the birth certificate would have a section of who is the mom of the child. It would say like mom's name or mother's name, and the name of the mom or the mother would be the same name the marriage license certificate says is the name of the wife from the marriage license certificate. And the marriage license certificate would have a name of the husband, and the husband, the name the marriage license certificate says the husband is, would be given credit for doing the job of saving virginity, meaning he's voluntary going all the way 6 for the purpose of marriage. Because evidence would show from birth certificate dates, names, and marriage license certificate evidence of there was never a child born outside of the identity of the marriage license certificate evidence of with the husband from the name the marriage license certificate says is the husband. The husband claiming being a husband was not the problem because the husband never made any pregnancies outside of the identity of what his marriage license certificate says his marriage is. You know, is what my tribe teaches me. Which is why, you know, I have a similar character because I myself saved my virginity for the purpose of being married to one spouse only ever in life. And I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is. You know, because I was never interested in being one of those people causing problems of way too many pregnancies and creating single moms or single mothers or creating single parent households, you know. And I am not interested in creating single moms or creating single mothers or creating single parent households, you know. And one of the reasons why I am not interested is because every day or when I go outside, seeing so many homeless people and seeing so many people who don't have places of living or staying or being inside of, and it's very cold outside, and you know, it's crazy, you know, if anyone, you know, those strangers would be voluntarily creating pregnancies if there's not enough room for the people already here. If there's not enough houses and there's not enough homes and there's not enough food and there's not enough places for staying, then it seems crazy for those strangers to be voluntarily creating pregnancies when there's not enough houses and not enough food and not enough places for the people already here, you know. Sometimes it makes the person wonder, why was any of them ever having sex in the first place? You know, creating all of those problems of all of those people, you know, and, you know, I don't really understand it, you know. And, you know, since I'm not naming any names and I don't know them, and, you know, since it's strangers, there's no reason for being mad at me because I am not specifically naming or talking about anyone directly or indirectly. You know, there is no message or code or anything for reading into. So, you know, in that way, a person would have no way of telling lies or saying that I thought he meant something else, you know. So, you know, speaking of what my tribe taught to me, you know, I followed the instructions of what I was taught, you know, of saving my virginity, you know, my sex, you know, what they call doing it, voluntarily doing it, you know, for the purpose of being married, you know, is what my tribe taught to me, you know. So, you know, he say that, it was some strangers or some other people who was part of some kind of sex church. Or they was claiming being church thugs, you know. They was claiming being, a gang at church. Or a mob or a mafia at church. You know, wearing suits and ties and claiming being gangsters. Some of them even claim to be gangsters for God or God's gangsters and stuff. And I'm not part of them, you know. And they called it organized crime and organized religion. And they said it was some kind of sex cult or a fertility cult of them intentionally creating pregnancies and, you know, had way too much sex. And because of those strangers caused all of the problems of why way too many people had way too many pregnancies, with way too many homeless people in the street, with way too many children, you know, inside of single parent households. Way too many pregnancies have been aborted. Now way too many ghosts and bad spirits from those abortions hunting people, from way too much sex had from way too many people, you know, strangers who was following the instructions of some strange God or some strange other teaching from some other tribe. I'm not part of it, you know. I am not the cause of it, you know. I stay inside of my marriage license certificate household. And I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, you know. They say the problem, you know, happened because some stranger had the idea of having going all the way sex, creating a pregnancy with the person. And then going to another person, voluntarily having going all the way sex, create another pregnancy. You know. And some people did more, so they said some strangers did. They said, you know, some strangers had a practice of voluntarily creating a pregnancy with more than, you know, one husband, or with more than one wife, you know. What they said is, it's like, you know, if a stranger asks their mom, was all of your pregnancies made from the same person and for the purpose of being married to the same person? Or was you one of those strangers who had the wrong kind of sex and caused the problems of this mess going on in the world? Then, you know, whatever sexual choices she made and whatever problems she made, if she voluntarily did it, then she voluntarily caused those problems. You know, even if it's some stranger's mom. And they say it's the same way, you know, fair is fair. If it was some stranger's dad, if some stranger's dad, you know, was asked the same question. Hey, Dad, was all of the pregnancies you ever made with the same person for the purpose of being married? And the only person you ever had voluntary going all the way 6 with? Ever in life? And if the dad, you know, said no, he had sex with more than one person, he made different people pregnant. It wasn't for the purpose of being married to just one person. And if that's what the dad says, then he caused his own problems from his own sexual greed of not being satisfied with one wife. The same way, if it was the mom, you know, those strangers, whether it was the stranger's dad or the stranger's mom, not being satisfied with one spouse, then strangers caused problems for themselves from strangers' sexual appetite of not being satisfied with one spouse. You know, it's what they say. This language says it is called when a person, you know, being married, a husband is called a spouse, a wife is called a spouse. So since I never said anyone's name, and since speaking of strangers, there's no reason for being mad at me, you know, if, you know, a person voluntarily chose having the character of not being satisfied with one spouse, and a person voluntarily chose, you know, a stranger. That's what I'm talking about when I say a person. If a stranger voluntarily chose the character of not being satisfied with one spouse, and if a stranger voluntarily chose the choice of having the character of not being satisfied with one spouse, if a stranger voluntarily chose the character of, if a person asked a stranger, was all the sex that you ever had your voluntary going all the way 6? And was all the pregnancies you ever made for the purpose of being married with the person you made the pregnancy with? Was all the sex you ever had, you know, voluntary going all the way 6 with the person you're claiming being married with? Just you and the one person you're claiming being married with? And if the answer is no, then, you know, it's not my fault if a stranger was given a life and an existence inside of this world, and for some strange reason, a stranger chose the character of not being satisfied with one spouse, and a stranger chose the character of having sex with more than one person. And what it means is, if a stranger claimed having sex with her and him and her and her, him and him, you know, more than one person. And if a stranger claims saying that he got her pregnant and he got her pregnant and he got her pregnant and he voluntarily had sex with him one time, and then, you know, it's not my fault if a stranger voluntarily chose doing those types of situations of voluntarily going all the way and, cause the pregnancies of the type of where single parent homes happened because a stranger decided he liked it her more than him and her and her. And so he moved in with her. And the other single parent households were single parent households because the stranger decided he liked the sex of some other person he had sex with more than the others who he voluntarily got pregnant. So that's what my tribe was teaching me of what it means when someone had way too much sex and where single parent households came from, and of it being abusive to females because the single parent households would feel sexually abused, mentally abused, and hurt because whoever the stranger is impregnated them with a child and then left them behind and went claiming being in love or claiming being married to some other person. And they say sometimes it happened the other way, with the man or with another guy. They say sometimes after the stranger, would have gotten all of those different females pregnant, and sometimes he caused the abortions, or influenced them. Sometimes the stranger would say he didn't want her or her baby. He didn't want her or her child. He didn't want her either. He would rather go and be with his boyfriend, another man, a male, a dude with a penis, and he would rather sleep in the bed and lay up with another man. And sometimes, he would get a marriage license certificate of a man and another man claiming being married to each other, and would not care about the single moms he made, into single moms from his own sex of him impregnating them, and that it was his fault for impregnating them, because once he impregnated them into becoming single moms, he left them being single moms. And when he left, he moved in with another guy, another dude, another man, and claimed to being married with another man, having a marriage license certificate of a male and a male, and I never did, I'm not part of it, because I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, So, there's no reason for being mad at me for, what my tribe teaches me, So, answering of what my tribe teaches me of, saving my voluntary going all the way 6 for the purpose of being married, to one spouse only ever in life. And, they say, my tribe taught me a story of why too many pregnancies is bad and why having sex with different people, outside of the identity of, your own marriage license certificate, if a person has a marriage license certificate, then they say you're not supposed to be having sex outside of the identity of your own marriage license certificate if you have a marriage license certificate, It's what my tribe teaches me, So, it's different, for people of other tribes. I don't know them, or I don't have any experience in being part of their tribe, so I'm not speaking of, them strangers, because I don't have any experience in, being one of them, So, speaking only of what my tribe teaches me, they say, if it was 5 people, if the whole world only had 5 people inside of it, it would be enough food for all 5 people. It would be enough land and enough places for all 5 people having a place of living. If only 5 people needed food, then with all of the land and all of the earth and all of the space, there would not be a lot of work to do, because if only 5 people existed, it would be plenty, way more than enough for 5 people having food and land and space and, it would be a lot for 5 people if only 5 people existed. And they say, long ago, it was like that. But somebody had a bad idea of continuing their own bloodline for some crazy reason. Someone thought of themselves as being so great that someone had the idea of impregnating people with their, because someone felt it should be another them. Someone was so obsessed with themselves that someone felt so great that someone felt that it should be more of them. So someone went out impregnating people, and now all of these people without a place to stay, all of these people fighting with each other, all of these people mad with each other, all of these people who never existed in the first place, all of these people fighting over the land, over the food, over each other's businesses, stealing stuff from each other, breaking in each other's houses and cars, taking each other's lives, fighting each other over each other's girlfriends and wife and husband and all of this stuff, when none of these people ever had, there was no reason for so many people ever existing in the first place. But, someone with a bad idea, had the idea of being so great that someone thought of themselves as being so great that someone thought of themselves as being the type of person who with the of impregnating other people, making copies of themselves. Is what they say, It was like, think about it, Brandon, if only 5 people existed in all of this world, all of this land, and all of this stuff, it would be more than enough, wouldn't it? it would be plenty. It would be nothing for fighting about or arguing about or being mad about. It would be more than enough so there would be no reason for anyone stealing or robbing or any of that stuff with it. They was like, well, think about it. All of the strangers and all of the birth certificates, they say there's a higher up of watchers. Some people call them angels. Some people call them gods. Some people simply call them the higher ups. And that people would be getting in trouble for having all of that sex and creating all of those pregnancies and creating all of these problems. Especially if there is not a marriage license certificate as evidence of a marriage. And especially if once, for the ones who do have a marriage license certificate, if every single birth from the her or the him who made the pregnancy, if all of their children were not made from her or him, meaning if she had sex outside of him and made a pregnancy, she would be in trouble. If he had sex outside of her and made a pregnancy, he would be in trouble. And the reason why they said those people would be in trouble because it's too much fighting and arguing and stuff going on. And with so many people already existing inside of the world today, there's no reason for people intentionally making pregnancies if it's not for the purpose of being married. It's what they say, So, there's no reason for being mad at me, for, following the instructions of what my tribe teaches me. Which is why I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, Because, caring for others, when there's so many people needing a place for living, when there's so many people needing housing, when there's so many people needing food and clothes and stuff, when there's so many people, needing, a husband or a wife, I'm not in a sexual relationship with another guy, another male, another dude, So, there should be plenty of husbands available for, those looking for a husband, since I am not sexually involved with another male, another guy, a boy, or a dude, or a girl, an underage child, And what it means is that, if a girl, had plans, that's why I mentioned the girl, if a girl had plans of, wanting a husband being married to her, once she is, grown and old enough for getting a marriage license certificate herself, then there's no reason for her being mad at me because, since I am not sexually involved with males, guys, men, boys, stuff like that, then there should be plenty of options of boys, men, males, or guys, for her, of choosing one and telling him, according to what my tribe teaches me of the way it goes, she would be telling him she wants a marriage with him. And if she wants a marriage with him, she would be saving her virginity, her voluntary going all the way sex for him, for the purpose of being married to him when she is, old enough for getting a marriage license certificate. And the reason for her telling him would be, so if he was a virgin, then it would be a way of him saving his virginity, waiting for her. So when she becomes old enough for getting a marriage life certificate, then a virgin marriage could happen, because he would have never had sex with anyone ever in life, and she would have never had sex with anyone ever in life. And then being married would be great, because he would have no ex and no sexual past, and she would have no ex and no sexual past, and there would be no reason for being mad at each other, because there would be no one claiming of ever having had sex with his wife, and there would be no one claiming of ever had sex with her husband. And there would be no reason for being sexually frustrated, because if anyone said or made claims of having sex with him or his wife, it would be a lie. And so since it would be a lie, it wouldn't really bother him or her, because no one ever would have ever had sex with him, and no one would have ever really ever had sex with her. And so, there would be no reason for, being mad if it never happened, It's what my tribe teaches me, So, they say, a lot of the problems happen because of, a sex cult. They say it's like a fertility cult or a bad church. And I don't really know how to explain it, because, I'm not part of the cult. I'm not part of the bad church. I'm not part of any, They say, it was a movie. It was a movie called Midsummer. It was called Midsummer. I think it's spelled Midsommer. Midsummer. And what happened in the movie, it was a dude named Christian. And he had a girlfriend. I think her name was Danny or Danae or something. Both of them had went out of town to a sex cult. I don't think that they knowed it was a sex cult at first. But when they got there, it was an underage girl staring at him. The dude, Christian, was his name. The underage girl was staring at the dude named Christian. And the dude named Christian was looking at the underage girl like he thought she liked him. It's what I think it looked like he was thinking she liked him in the going all the way having sex type of liking him. Girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, married type of liking him. And he could have told his girlfriend, hey, that little underage girl has a strong sex vibe and was looking at me with sex looks and sex eyes And it seems like some type of witchcraft of projecting at me. And I'm not interested in having sex with an underage person. I'm not interested in creating a pregnancy with an underage person. It's what he could have told his girlfriend, they say. And his name was Christian, and the movie was called Midsummer. So I was watching the movie, and when I was watching the movie, he never told his girlfriend at all, His girlfriend, they had said that all of the people inside of her family, like, had a funeral from being burned in a fire and was gone. And Danny was sad because of what happened with her family. And all she had was her boyfriend. And both of them had gone out of town. And when she went out of town, both of them had went to that Midsummer place. The movie was called Midsummer. And I think it was called a festival, the Midsummer Festival. It was some kind of tradition. And it seemed that both of them had went to the wrong church in the wrong area of the wrong, place. And when the dude got there, all he cared about was that little underage girl and having sex with her. And the first chance he got, when he saw her naked, she was laying on the floor, She was laying on the floor naked. And he went and got on top of her, and he was doing it to her. And, from the way the movie, made it seem as if he had got her pregnant. He was a grown person having sex with a child and possibly had got her pregnant instead of, his girlfriend who was grown. He had a grown girlfriend with him. His girlfriend was sad and feeling bad and all of it. He didn't care about his girlfriend. He only wanted sex with the underage person, The underage girl, she never asked him. She never instructed him into doing it to her or any of that stuff. It was all his fault. The dude, they said his name was Christian. He was lusting after that underage girl. He saw her laying down on the floor and she was naked, and he went and got on top of her and he was doing it to her. And, they say that, they think that he had got her pregnant. And then he never told his girlfriend at all, So they said he was not the victim, because if he would have told his girlfriend could have said, let's go. It's no point in being at a place if underage children was tempting you into having sex and bothering you and, attempted making a pregnancy with you, then it's no point of staying in a place with underage children attempting sex and pregnancy with grown people. Is what, he could have said to his girlfriend and what she could have said, with him, And then, it would be no problem because it would be no sex being had with grown people and children. So, they said he was not the victim because he voluntarily had sex with the child. And then, she wasn't the only person. He voluntarily had sex with other people at the Midsummer Festival. And they say that, some of them was bad witches. Some of them, they say, was good witches because, they say some of the witches are good and some of the witches are bad. But they say the dude, Christian, had sex with the bad witches because they say he had the character, of a bad person himself. And they say, he was not the victim because he never told his girlfriend that, hey, those bad witches and that underage girl was attempting sex. It seems. And if he felt that way, he could have left without doing it to them. And he never left, because he got burnt up in a fire. He got sacrificed, inside of the sex cult because they was like, hey, see your boyfriend Christian over there? You know what he did? He had sex with that underage girl. And she possibly got pregnant from him voluntarily doing it to her. And see your boyfriend Christian over there? He voluntarily had sex with those other witches too. Did he tell you about any of it? And it was like the girl was like, no. And it was like, well, now you know why he been ignoring you all this time. Because he wanted some of that young stuff. And he wanted some of them other women. And he had voluntary going all the way sex with them. So, and it was like, it was the Midsummer movie, and they was like, they was like, he hasn't been doing it to you at all, has he? It was like, no. It was like, well, I guess he didn't have time for doing it to you, but if he was so busy doing it to underage children and doing it to old ladies and witches and stuff like that, seems like, he doesn't really even care about you. And, since both of them was at someone else's church, inside of the sex cult, the people had said that, since he was a grown person having sex with a child, the dude name was Christian, that, the punishment would be him sacrificing his life being burnt in the fire for the sex he had voluntarily had with an underage person, And the craziest part about it was, when he was burnt in the fire, it was his girlfriend doing it, The girl that they said her name was Danny, she was the one lighting the fire, burning him up into the fire. And at the same time, she was joining the sex cult. She became a member of the group. Because when she was burning him up in the fire, she became guilty of taking his life. They said she could have walked away and said, what? Even though he had sex with a child and he became, a sex offender, there's no reason for Danny becoming, you know, the character of taking someone's life. You know, she had a choice, they say. But, you know, they said, you know, she chose taking his life and burning him up in the fire. And they said, you know, the sex cult had ruined both of their life. You know, the dude got burnt in the fire, you know, the punishment for being a grown person having sex with a child. And then the girl, when she joined and was burning him in the fire, you know, she became guilty of taking his life. And, you know, she became, you know, stuck at the sex cult with them because, you know, they said that they would tell that she was the one who had burnt the Christian up and that she would be guilty of murder and would be going to jail, you know, forever. That's what it seems, you know. So, you know, they say it was a bad church, a sex cult, because, you know, it was a bad ending for Christian because he got burnt in the fire and had the wrong kind of sex. And then, you know, it was a bad ending for Danny because she became guilty of taking his life because she burnt him up in the fire. And, you know, what I learned from seeing that movie was, you know, I would never want to have those characters, you know, of being guilty of taking someone's life or being burnt in a fire, you know, from being a grown person having sex with some child, or from being a grown person having sex, you know, outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, you know. Because that was the other part of the movie. They say, you know, the church was so strict to where the dude was also burnt in the fire for sex crimes because since he did not have a marriage license certificate, all the sex that he had was sex outside of the identity of a marriage license certificate because he never had a marriage license certificate. So, you know, they said he was a criminal and he was not a victim. And so he was burnt in a fire. It was like going to the lake of fire, you know. So, you know, growing up, you know, it seems that, you know, a lot of crazy stuff, you know, has happened, you know. I always told whenever some underage person or anyone outside of the identity of my marriage license certificate tried touching me, or tried some kind of sex vibe or sex ways to me, you know. Because, you know, I would never want to end up being burnt in a fire or a lake of fire or whatever that stuff was, you know, them people was talking about, you know. From having a crazy idea of some little underage girl liking me. Or from having a crazy idea of someone outside of the identity of my marriage license certificate being in love with me or liking me or wanting a pregnancy made from me. You know. And the movie was called Midsummer, you know. And it's very different, you know. So, you know, from watching a movie and thinking, you know, it's like, you know, it's crazy, you know. It seemed like those people was a different tribe, you know. So, you know, my tribe, the tribe of never having sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, means I don't have to worry about being a sacrifice, being burnt in a fire, or any of that stuff, because I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, you know. So, you know, answering the question, you know, I know it was a long answer, but, you know, answering the question of what my tribe teaches me from what I witnessed, you know. They say somebody had way too much sex with way too many people and caused way too many pregnancies, and, you know, I don't know who it was, you know. So, you know, it's not my fault, you know. So, you know, this has been a video to me, talking to myself. Hey, Brandon, you know, because answering the questions of what